and welcome to the Plug in Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and this is your checkpoint for video game news, reviews, and hot takes nobody asked for. Look at that, I got myself a catchphrase, ladies and gentlemen. In this episode, it's jam-packed with happenings. We have the Tokyo Game Show, specifically the Sony State of Play. We have the King of Crashouts, Randy Pitchford, telling you your PC shouldn't be able to handle Borderlands 3. 4. Yeah, it's the fourth one. Gosh darn it. And then, of course, Microsoft raising console prices yet again in this economy. Come on. And much, much more. On top of impressions this week, very excited to talk about long time coming Metaphor Rephantazio. That's right. From the makers of the Persona series, we have the new IP from Atlas that I've finally completed after many, many, many hours. Hear my impressions at the end of the show. But first, we have a lot in the housekeeping. So what you're used to me saying is the normal, hey, you want to be a part of the show? Why don't you send us an email at plugandplaypodcast1@gmail.com. I don't bite. You can do it. Be a part of the show. Send me a question, a comment. I'll read it out. It's a conversation. And then, of course, there's timestamps in the description. I do it for you. It's a labor of love. If you don't like something I'm saying, you can skip past it. If you want to hear me say something different, it's there. It's in the timestamps. It's for you. And then, of course, the classic, like, comment, subscribe. We're on all your favorite services. You know, Spotify, Apple Podcast, the works. But now I've finally gotten up to it. We're doing a lot behind the scenes here at Plug and Play Podcast. We are expanding. We now have a Twitter account or an X account, whatever the heck you want to call it, a TikTok, an Instagram, a YouTube, all at Plug in Play Pod 1. Come check us out. Give us a like. Give us a follow. Please, for the love of God, follow. But we're trying to figure out some content moving forward to add to those channels, trying to expand, trying to get the name out there a little bit more because that's what brands like to see. We'll get into it maybe on another podcast, but really trying to expand the follower count right now for the Plug and Play podcast. So why don't you give us a like, join the army. I've never appreciated when fan bases are referred to as like a military faction. That just seems excessive. It seems dangerous, that kind of rhetoric. I don't know. That's just me. Maybe I'm just old fashioned. But that is, the housekeeping. It has been a very, very busy week. Really, last week I was, on my hands and knees thanking God that there was a Nintendo Direct that just kind of showed up out of nowhere. There was no news, kind of skimmed past most of it. Now it's like I had to start removing stuff from the dock. There was too much. So here we are with the many headlines, specifically with the Tokyo Game Show. Tokyo Game Show kind of a checkpoint in a lot of ways for the year. There's not normally a lot of huge announcements. Sometimes you'll see something interesting here or there, but for the most part, it's a pretty chill event. Kind of a softening of the year per se. Maybe you'll see some stuff that's coming out tail end, some updates for it, in December, November releases, and then of course, a couple of tricklings for the, February, March kind of calendar year area. So this was not massive. We had a lot of, like Microsoft had a conference. I didn't even watch it. They showed off Forza Horizon 6, I think, is the newest one. It will be in Japan. And that's like the only thing worth mentioning from that entire conference. Everything else I only heard was like, yeah, Microsoft is really trying to pander to the Japanese audience in an almost offensive way. And I was just like, okay, well, that sounds kind of normal. Microsoft desperately pleading and begging for the Japanese audience to pay any attention to them. That is, kind of par for the course for Xbox. So understandably so. We had Kojima. He had his own little mini press conference of sorts where you can have a Hideo Kojima credit card and then buy sake, his own sake with it. Yeah, this is not the first time. It's a funny aside. That's actually not the first time I've seen something like that. Like Kojima making weird merchandise decisions that just kind of seem a little like preemptive, I guess. Almost. The first time I saw it was when I was at E3 and Kojima had his own. He had just started his own studio, and there was a booth outside that was selling his merch, and there was like some ridiculously like expensive watch. It was like an over $1,000 watch, and I remember, and it was like a logo. I mean, it was the Kojima Studios logo, right? But at that point, he had not made anything yet. Like, I don't even think Death Stranding had been announced yet, and like he was already producing merch for his studio that was ridiculously overpriced. And I remember I met some chick in line waiting for a demo, and we were just talking, and I was like, "Oh, did you get the Kojima merch?" And she was like, "Yeah, man, I got the watch." I was like, "You got the watch? Why?" And she was like, "Well, I just really like Kojima." And I'm just like, "Bro, I feel like we're jumping the gun a little bit. Like, let's wait until he maybe makes a game before." I mean, and Death Stranding is probably one of my favorite games ever. One of the few games that has ever really touched me in a like art way. Like, it's probably the first thing I've ever like experienced that made me think art was real. But like, why are we doing this? I don't know. But anyway, he showed off his horror game. That's, I'm actually pretty excited for, because I think PT is the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my life, which is obviously, a Hideo Kojima project that Konami, squashed. Which now, of course, like everybody's cool with Konami again because they're making good games or games that people like again. I think they're honestly getting kind of lucky with it. Specifically Silent Hill F, like from the people who made the Resident Evil multiplayer games, play Silent Hill F. Like, like that sounds like a nightmare. That sounds like a recipe for disaster. The second highest rated Silent Hill game of all time. Wow, you wouldn't have been able to convince me of that a week ago. I'll say that much. So, looking forward to that. But not a whole lot else coming out of Tokyo Game Show except for the Sony State of Play, dropped announced one day before its reveal. Seems to be the way a lot of people are kind of marketing their press conferences now, is not at all. It's just, I don't know if it's a testament to how successful these things are, and how much people truly care, and how much the internet kind of just gets the message to who it needs to go to, it seems. But yeah, people just don't seem to really want to build these things up anymore. It's pretty much just like, we hear rumors, there's going to be a State of Play this week, and then the day before they announce it. It just is, I don't know, seems odd. But anyway, this one was an interesting one. I was at work when it was aired. It aired at 4 o'clock Central Time, which is my time zone. So not for the Japanese audience at all, which is funny because it was clearly Japanese focused, or I would say it's clearly Japanese focused. Really looking at the overall, the sky high view here, it's really not. But anyway, I came back home. I saw comments. The top comment, I did, I was looking at it on mobile, and so the top comment was just right there. And I think it said something like, my expectations were like underneath, like below zero, and somehow it still didn't meet my expectations. And I was like, going into it, I was like, well, we kind of know Wolverine's going to be there, and we know Saros is going to be there. Surely they showed something that was really cool. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the Sony State of Play for Tokyo Game Show. So, we started off with what Sony had already announced was going to be there, which is Saros. If you are unfamiliar Soros is the next game from Housemarque, who made Returnal, which is kind of like a bullet heck shooter, kind of high difficulty roguelike experience. I played it. It is really hard, and I probably got about halfway through it, and I was just like, yeah, I kind of defaulted to my normal stance of like, well, I have enough problems in my life already. I really don't need an additional challenge to deal with in my life, and I just backed off. I was like, yeah, I've hit a wall with this boss. I don't really want to deal with this challenge. I'm done. But it's hard for me to deny that Housemarque is honestly a really interesting purchase for them. Sony does own Housemarque now, but they've always been kind of these high score chasing, fast twitch reflex kind of games. I really respect the design of Returnal, but I really didn't love the difficulty that much. So just a personal preference thing, but I totally respect the game and its design. And so I was like, okay, Soros is the sequel. Like maybe they've improved on some things, some big changes. Let's see what's going on with Soros. Housemarque's, premier AAA title that was critically renowned. What do we got? Well, it's Returnal, but it's red. And it's like, okay, that's kind of not what I was expecting. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more. We got a release date of March 20th. So, in my opinion, kind of right around the corner, about 6 months away. To me, that's, I guess, right around the corner. But, I don't know, maybe just in old age, time really does fly. Anyway, not much to get excited about here. Obviously, we're going to see more as we continue to get closer to the actual release. I'm sure that there is a marketing campaign where we'll see more in general. But from what we saw here, it was pretty much entirely gameplay. Great. Happy to see it. We didn't see that with something later in the showcase that we'll get into. But here I really just saw wow, this is just Returnal with a different color. And that's pretty much it. Very unimpressed with Soros, especially as somebody who, like I said, already bounced off of Returnal. I was really hoping for a little bit more on this game to really get me excited for it, and it didn't really do that. And I would assume that, a lot of people probably, the audience for this game is probably still pretty niche. So, I don't know. That's me. That's my assumption. But I would just assume that. This is not like a mass market appeal kind of game, especially when you have a higher difficulty that typically tends to scare a lot of casual gamers off. And there's a lot going on in Returnal and Soros on screen. So, I don't know. It just seems like that would make it more of a niche audience because a lot of people would just be intimidated by it. But, again, we need to see more, but a very underwhelming gameplay reveal considering how similar it is to Returnal. Next up was Zaum. Zaum, who you may know as that studio that's in a lot of controversy. It showed off 0 parades for Dead Spies. So I had to look this up because I was like, oh man, I totally freaking forgot. What the frick is Zaum again? And it is not the developers. So Zaum is a studio that made Disco Elysium, a very highly critically acclaimed and commercially successful CRPG. Mainly known for its dialogue, philosophical conversations, choices, reactions in the world that it produces, so on and so forth. I played it. I think it's good. Didn't resonate with me as much as I think it resonated with a lot of other people, but I still respect the game wholly and highly. So anyway, those two guys who made the game, their company got bought out, and they had some ideas that, they're communists. I think it's very open. The developers for the original Disco Elysium were communists or socialists, one of the two. And they, kind of sold out. They had a bigger studio buy them, or a bigger, entity buy them, and they were eventually ousted. They were fired, more or less. They were kicked out of the company, and they were kind of the people really wholly responsible for Disco Elysium. So this is a Disco Elysium-like. It looks a lot like Disco Elysium. There's a lot of similarities, but it has nothing to do with the original people who made Disco Elysium. So already, obviously, I would say if you're a moral person, if you're like, oh, well, on a moral standpoint, I don't want to support these people who were kind of screwed over the original creators of the series, yeah, I'd say you probably want to stay away from this one. But like, if you like Disco Elysium and you're just like, I'll consume whatever looks good, this is for you, baby. It honestly looks like in my opinion, a better Disco Elysium. It seems like there's a little bit more concrete ideas and concepts going on here that lead to more interesting scenarios. But that's just me. That's my opinion and what I saw. Next up, Microsoft Flight Simulator coming to the PS5. This was kind of rumored for a long time. Finally happened. This is just inevitable, right? I mean, we have every Xbox property. If you didn't know Microsoft Flight Simulator, if you didn't understand by the Microsoft in the Microsoft Flight Simulator name, it's an Xbox and PC exclusive because that's kind of Microsoft's bread and butter. As of the past few years, all of their IP have really been trickling down into the Sony ecosystem and really any ecosystem that can handle it. And by that, I just mean not on the Switch. But like, you know, they're basically a publisher now. Microsoft, there's no reason to own an Xbox. You know, this is just another one of those exclusive IP that you could have said, well, I really only care about Microsoft Flight Simulator. That's why I have an Xbox, or that's why I'm only playing on PC and I don't have a PS5. It's like, well, not anymore, baby. Like, it's on PS5. So, like, this is just another in a long line of we will eventually have everything that is on Xbox be on PlayStation 5. So I'm not interested in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I'm not a sim guy. But, like, you know, we got it. It's another one. Another one bites the dust in terms of Xbox exclusivity. Next up was the Battlefield 6 campaign mode trailer. It looks like a action movie, kind of like an older Call of Duty campaign. It's really funny to see, you know, everybody clamoring for Battlefield again and, you know, being like, oh, well, it's the differentiator is that it's grounded, unlike Call of Duty, who has Nicki Minaj skins and Beavis and Butthead skins. It's like, yeah, but also, like, it is not wholly realistic either, right? You know, like, it's, and this kind of exemplified that for me. This looks like a freaking Mission Impossible movie, to be quite frank. You know, yes, it's a grounded Mission Impossible movie, but it's still a Mission Impossible movie to me. So, you know, it is what it is. I expect this to be a fine campaign. I really think, you know, I enjoyed the Battlefield 6 beta a lot, but I mean, I don't know. Like, why did the last few games not do as well? Why did everybody seem to not care about them? I don't know. Obviously, I know the last one was like a total mess, but like, I don't know. It just seems like people are really getting into Battlefield 6 for some reason. It's just like, well, it's just kind of doing what it was doing years ago. It just kind of started doing what people, you know, the traditional Battlefield experience. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know if that's something to necessarily be excited for, but it is fun. So, you know, like, if I ever end up getting Battlefield 6 when it inevitably becomes a free-to-play game, I'll give the campaign a shot, and it will be a 7 out of 10 campaign, and that will be just fine. As long as I see some cool explosions, which the trailer does confirm it has. Next up, Deus Ex is getting a remaster, and gosh darn, did this look like comically bad. It was like, oh yeah, Deus Ex is getting a remaster. It's going to be really cool. One of the most beloved games of all time. Aspire, you know, the remake studio, the remaster remake studio behind, you know, the new Soul Reaver remastered, KOTOR remastered, Tomb Raider remastered. They're basically, that's all they freaking do. They're doing a Deus Ex remaster. It's like, okay, cool. And then they show the, like, before and after. I was like, bro, this looks butt ugly. It looks like butt ugly Martians, but like Deus Ex at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Like, it looks really bad. I genuinely was like, honestly, if they gave me a toggle between like old school Deus Ex and this Deus Ex, I would probably stick with the original graphical settings. Like, it just looks really awkward, really bad. And I'm like, I feel like if you were going to do this, if you were going to make so many drastic changes to the textures, you should have just kind of made it from the ground up, right? You know, like it should have been a ground up remake. I don't think that would have been a bad idea, or like a partial ground up remake. Like, I think the new Soul Reaver remastered looks good. Like, it looks fine. You know, same with KOTOR and Tomb Raider. Like, they all kind of look acceptable. And like in this instance, I really just kind of was like, dang, they really did this. They did this dirty, dude. You know, on top of that, it's obviously going to come with your control enhancements and modern day, you know, quality of life stuff. But from what I read, it just doesn't seem like that much of a change. Like, the cosmetic changes are the main thing here, and it just looks real bad. So, ooh, not so good. Next up was Halloween, the game from the movie, not the celebratory holiday, the game. This has been revealed. So it was really just a gameplay reveal and a release date, which, two things here. One, this is a straight carbon copy of, like, did you play any, you know, asymmetric horror game, multiplayer game? This is that. You know, like, did you play Friday the 13th, the game? It's almost like deja vu, baby. Like, it is the exact same game. How do they keep getting away with this? It's, you know, they shut down Friday the 13th because I think of IP differences. And so, like, this is just another game that's probably going to last a couple of years and get shut down because of the same reason. But, you know, it's another asymmetric horror game. Their release date, September 8th, 2026. Why are we talking about this game at all? There is no way that release date holds. I do not believe it. Too many release dates get moved around too much. I mean, you can't tell me you have a year plus and you're like, yeah, we're going to be on track 100% until for the next year. Like, no way. That's just not how development goes, like 99% of the time. So, almost kind of comical for them to be like, yeah, we're sticking to a September 8th date of the next year in September of this year. I'm like, one, you should just, like, not talk about this game. Like, obviously, we've kind of learned, and it seems like most companies have adhered to, shorter marketing campaigns are just better for retention, for people to remember these games and get excited for it. And an entire year's worth of runway is just it's just too long. People will forget. People won't care. It'll just kind of be this existing thing, and I don't think it differentiates itself enough outside of its IP. Like I said, I feel like I've seen like 4 games like this in the past couple of years. So like, I don't know. Like, it wasn't too exciting to see this. Speaking of not too exciting to see this, Last Epoch is on its way to PS5. What the frick is Last Epoch? Oh, and the expansion's coming too. What the frick is Last Epoch? It's an ARPG, an action RPG. I have never heard of it. I think I've maybe seen it around. Maybe. It's owned by Krafton. They just bought the studio a while back, and that's why Krafton owns it. Which, if you don't remember, Krafton's like the company that's in the middle of all that weird stuff with Subnautica 2, that whole drama, the internet drama. But like, that's who this is coming from. Reviews, I checked reviews for this. It seems to be fine. It is not setting the world on fire. Just seems like an odd thing to be popping up in this direct or in this state of play. I don't think many people are super excited about it. Speaking of not super excited about it, can you see a theme here? 7 Deadly Sins Origin is coming to PS5 January 28th. This is based on the anime that I watched like a season and a half of and dropped and was like, this is the most mid shonen I've ever seen. And I've only heard it like gets way worse beyond that. Like way, way worse, and in many different respects, and they're making a game out of it. It's weird how these anime games, look, I'm a big weeb, okay? I play a lot of anime games. I love a lot of anime games, but it is hard for me to accept, or hard for me to argue, that the vast majority of anime games are like absolute cash grabs. 110% cash grabs. They're not normally produced very well. They're normally pretty shoddy and not fun, and like just an excuse to kind of rake in sales from an IP that's popular. And that's what this kind of looks like. It is a free-to-play Genshin clone. Yeah, that just yikes. Nope. Definitely going to be skipping this one. Even the free price point does not entice me very much there. Next was Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, showing off its Mega Man DLC pack containing Mega Man, Proto Man, and a Dr. Wily castle course. Yeah, Crossworlds has been reviewing well. It seems to have a lot of interesting DLC. Pac-Man was obviously one that got shown off a few weeks ago, on top of Hatsune Miku. And then a few other interesting Sonic or Sega characters that have kind of made their way in there. They're kind of making it a Smash Brothers of sorts, for karts. I played the beta. It was fun. I think it's a solid kart racer for sure. But like, you know, it's DLC. I'm not a big Mega Man guy. Much respect to the lineage there, but I've just never played a lot of them. They were kind of after my time, so it's just kind of, or excuse me, before my time. So after my time, wow, that would be sad. But anyway, just kind of is what it is. A DLC announcement. Cool beans. Next up was Neo 3. It got a release date of February 2026. I played the demo for Neo 3. It is more Neo. I thought it was good, but I don't love hard games. Got to the boss, got kicked around a couple times, and bailed on it. But like getting to the boss, I actually had a lot of fun. The combat in those games is really well done. It's just a matter of, getting good at the game, and I just don't feel like doing that. I'd rather just have fun and not practice having fun. Next, Dynasty Warriors 3. That thing's getting a remaster. Cool. I mean, like, I have been a very vocal guy that's like, yeah, Dynasty Warriors is a series that, and anything really coming from that studio is like, yeah, you can play it and have fun for 30 minutes, and then I never want to see that game again. It's weird how that works. how I'm like, yeah, I'm actually really enjoying this. So I'm just plowing through all these enemies. I feel really powerful and really cool. And then, like, after doing that for, like, half an hour, I'm like, dang, I spent $70 on this game? Wow, there's a lot of content. Okay, I think I'm just going to drop it. Well, according to what I've heard, this is apparently a fan favorite, Dynasty Warriors 3. I don't know why. This has always just kind of been a mid-series to me that just has a really clearly big following. I love the concept of Dynasty Warriors in terms of gameplay, but it just... No, I've just never had more fun with it than like 30 minutes. So, massive pass here for me. Next up, Code Vein 2. Release date revealed of January 30th. It's an anime Dark Souls game. Have we had enough of Dark Souls clones? Well, if you haven't and you like anime a lot, Code Vein 2 does exist. Next up was probably the biggest surprise of the show. Let It Die is getting a sequel, and it's coming December 3rd, so pretty soon. This is apparently not a free-to-play game, so that actually makes me a lot more interested in it. Let It Die is a pretty interesting, fun little game. It's a free-to-play game. I'm pretty sure it's still up, but, like, I played it for a little while. It's very Dark Souls-y. What really makes it special is, like, the PvP aspect of it. So, like, when you die, not only do you lose all your gear, but you lose your body. So, like, you can, like, essentially go back and you'll have to fight yourself with that person's, your equipment that you had. But what makes it even more interesting is you can, like, save your progress by going back to your base and, like, storing your bodies in, like, basically tubes. And then, like, if you want another attempt or basically an extra life, you can infiltrate somebody else's base, or they can infiltrate yours, and they can steal your body. And, like, that will become their body, which will essentially give them, like, an extra try or an extra life. It's a really interesting idea. Again, it's a little bit of a jank game. and it's hard. It's intended to be hard because it's a free-to-play game. So a lot of microtransactions in it, and, kind of didn't really rub me the right way in that sense, so I bounced off of it, and I kind of knew I would, because it was a very long game, a very hard game, and, obviously the microtransactions were just kind of there to really kind of entice you the entire time because it's so hard, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't really love that combo. It just feels kind of scummy. But, like, the personality, the charm, the ideas there, they're all really interesting. So, I mean, Let It Die has a lot of actual, like, pretty hardcore fans. You never hear about them, but, like, they're around, I know, and I think it's deservedly so. The game has some really cool stuff going for it. But, like, this game, being not free-to-play, makes me a lot more interested in it. I still don't think I'm going to get to it. I still think there's way too much out there, but, like, and I'm not a big difficulty guy, and this game is still definitely going to be hard, but I definitely see this as something people should keep their eye on, and it's really interesting that the series is even still around in the first place. Next up, Chrono Scribe, The Endless End, what a fun title, was unveiled. This is a Metroidvania, but what really sets it apart is its art style. It's a hand-drawn art style, and you're jumping around in the pages of a book, and it looks like a medieval-style book, and you're kind of, almost like kind of fourth wall breaking in a way. You're going outside of the pages into other books. All still seems to be the same art style, but, neither here nor there. But it looked like a cool game. Really what makes it look cool is the art style. They did not show off, like, this is from a really well-known developer or anything like that. It just is a cool Japanese-made game, which I guess is cool. It got a spotlight, but, like, really outside of the art style, what makes this game better than, like, any other Metroidvania that seems to be really flooding the market right now? I don't know. Like, that's a good question, and we'll see as the game continues to build up to its release, but I feel like I've gotten to a point where I'm like, yeah, art styles are cool, but, like, you shouldn't only play a game for its art style. So that's just a me thing. Maybe I'm a little pessimistic, but, like, that's just me. Next up, Crimson Desert launches in March. It looks cool, but I don't know anything about it. It didn't seem to be coming from a big developer or anything like that. It seemed to be all over the place. There's like, oh, well, there's orcs, and you're riding dragons. And then there was, like, some guns, and then there was, like, a dude piloting, like, a steampunk mech and, like, flying that around. And I'm like, what the frick is this game? Like, I don't know what it is because it just seems too all over the place. It looks fun, but, like, I obviously need to say way more of it before I make any kind of judgment call on this. Still too far out, too much going on there for me to really get a feel for it. So, moving on. They spent a lot of time talking about Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered, which comes out next week. It was first shown off at a State of Play like a couple of months ago. So, or I think like in June. So like 3 months ago. And it's like, why are we spending so much time talking about this game that like just basically just like lip service to Square is all I can assume it is, Square Enix. I have the game pre-ordered because it's, I had a $10 gift card to or a $10 coupon to Best Buy, and I was just like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll get it for $40. That's totally worth it because it's considered one of the best tactics game ever. I've always been interested in playing it, and this is clearly the best way to do it. And I was just like, heck yeah, dude, I'll definitely check it out. So I'm definitely going to be playing it, but like, why are we dedicating so much time talking about this game that we've already talked about in a State of Play? Nothing new, just a reminder. It's out next week, just in case you forgot. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Next up was some additions to the PlayStation Plus catalog. This always feels like filler. It's like, yeah, that's great, but this really could have just been a Twitter post, and like, that's all I really need. Alan Wake 2, Cocoon, and Goat Sim 3 are your PlayStation Plus offerings for October. Honestly, great offerings here. Alan Wake 2 was my top 3 games of 2023, which that was an incredibly stacked year. That was up against Baldur's Gate 3, Tears of the Kingdom, and it still made the top 3 for me. Great game. Really cannot recommend it enough. Cocoon is a really well-respected and super highly rated puzzle game. Won a lot of awards in the indie scene. Played and beat it. It's very short, but I think probably a little overrated, but still an interesting puzzle game. I would give it a shot for sure, especially for free. And Goat Sim 3 is a game that if you like goofy fun, just kind of playing around, there it is, baby. You got Goat Sim 3. On top of that, we got Last of Us Part 2 added to the PlayStation Plus Extra catalog. It's already there by the time you're listening to this recording. That's kind of part of the Last of Us Day. Every year, Sony kind of adds something Last of Us-y to the catalog or something like that because, it's the day that the outbreak occurred within the universe of The Last of Us. It's the real-world date. So, yeah, it's a remake of a game that really didn't need to be remade. So that's cool. Next up, introducing Sony's Pulse Elevate wireless speakers. So these are some Bluetooth speakers you can hook up to your computer. You can hook them up to your, remote play devices. You can make them mobile. They're chargeable, so you can pick them up, take them anywhere. Yeah. The main thing that I really saw here that was interesting is they really seem to double down on these are something you can use at your computer, which a lot of people aren't happy, but, Sony seems to be clearly moving a lot in the direction of, PC is a really valuable space that we want to be involved in, and that's cool. I think that's fine. I think, more people having access to these games is great. At least from a consumer standpoint. But that just seemed to be my takeaway from it, was Sony clearly cares about the PC audience. If you don't think they do, you're in denial. So I would expect a lot more of an aggressive approach towards PC in the future for Sony, as they've kind of alluded to recently. Next up, Gran Turismo 7. They just want to say that it's really popular. Did you know Gran Turismo 7 sold 100 million units, and it's Sony's #1 selling franchise of all time? Well, that's pretty much all they really wanted to tell you, that it still exists, and you can still buy it if you really wanted to. Cool. I don't care about driving games. I really don't care about driving sim games, which is really what Gran Turismo is, and it's insane to me that it's so popular, but, I get it. I'm a hardcore gamer, and really that's not hardcore gamers that are buying those games. I'm sure some do, but that's, it just is what it is. Just unfortunate. It's very much like we're Japanese. We have a big Japanese successful game, cool. It just felt like a waste of time. Next, God of War getting a limited edition 20th anniversary controller. Well, that's, I don't know. For a 20th anniversary, just seems like kind of a letdown. $85, by the way. Dang. That's not a big mic drop moment either. That's just what controllers cost now. I think it's because I think it does cost a little bit more. I think a normal controller is $70, $75, something like that. And this one's premium. I like the design. It's, kind of got Kratos's tattoo, and one of the shoulder buttons is colored like his tattoo, and then it's ash white. Kind of like Kratos. So, I like the design, but, I'm not going to just buy it just to collect it. I already have a couple of the more rare Sony collectible controllers, and I don't feel the need to invest in another one if I don't need it, because they clearly just are going to continue to pump these things out. So, I feel like for a 20th anniversary, we just had Nintendo do all that, Mario stuff for his 35th or 45th or whatever the frick it was. Just seems a little bit lackadaisical for that, especially when we know that there is a God of War Metroidvania game that's already pretty far in development. Why couldn't they just announce that here as part of its 20th anniversary? That seems like way more of an impactful deal. Don't know, but they didn't do that. So we will wait. And then finally, we wrap it all up with Insomniac's Wolverine. Finally, we see more than just a teaser trailer, a little bit of gameplay, and a fall 2026 release window. Pretty predictable. That'll be their big marquee game of next year, understandably so. The main actor will be Liam McIntyre, who you may know from Spartacus. I know from nothing. But apparently he's a real actor, and they really wanted to show that off. Most of the reveal that we got here, most of the attention that was focused on was just, dang, Liam McIntyre, he's really good at playing Wolverine. A lot of people making jokes that, like, he's Australian, and everybody seems to be Australian who plays Wolverine. Teehee. I think that takes away from the fact that this reveal was really underwhelming. We saw incredibly little gameplay. The gameplay that I did kind of pick apart and look at looked really standard and, like, not super impressive. Like I need to see more than just, like, Wolverine mashing square to claw an enemy. That seemed like all we really saw from this, and it was very small bits of it. I wasn't too blown away by this, and in all honesty, kind of disappointed by it. I guess it's also bloody, and, like, that's cool. It's clearly going for an M rating, but, like, I don't know. This was clearly the big showstopper, and it just didn't really. It kind of whimpered. It was much of a whimper to me. So, like, that was what we ended on. I will reserve any hype, any excitement for this game. I mean, this is also a game that we know has been through a lot of turmoil in terms of, like, people have been quitting. Specifically the leads of this have been kind of moved around a lot, and it seems like this game has been in trouble for a bit. So really a game that I need to see a lot more of, and a lot more hands-on presentations and reviews before I'm even sold that this game is anything over, like, an 85. And I think that 85 is pretty low for a game like this, to be frank. So, like, we'll see. Like, I think this game is already going to review well because it's Insomniac, it's Sony, and it's a Marvel IP that people are interested in. Like, it's already going to review well. So, like, if it doesn't review really, really well, that's when you know it's a frickin' problem. But, we'll see. Final thoughts. This was incredibly disappointing. Wow, this was really boring. I felt like we spent a lot of time treading water on games we already knew about, reveals that, I didn't really care about. Why are we spending so much time on Final Fantasy Remake? Why are we spending, or Final Fantasy Tactics Remake? Why are we spending so much time on Gran Turismo 7? Like, why are we spending so much time on X, Y, and Z? Like, Dynasty Warriors 3 is your big remake reveal, Deus Ex remake reveal. A lot of this stuff isn't even Japanese. If we're really trying to tailor it to, this is the Tokyo Game Show, deal. Like, Sony has a really good relationship with a lot of Japanese publishers and developers. Why do I feel like the most interesting thing I saw here was Chronoscribe, which is just kind of a cool art style, and, like, I don't really know how impressive it is as a game yet. Like, that's, I don't know. This is like, I feel like is giving it a solid C is even, like, really way overshooting it. Like, I think I have to give this presentation, like, a D. Like, a solid D. And that's, I can't remember the last time I gave something that low. And, like, it's not like this is horrible. It's not like they spat in my face, But, like, it's definitely, it definitely did not meet expectations, even though there, weren't very high expectations. So, top comment on YouTube, kind of nailed it. I was like, this guy... Internet's so pessimistic. Internet's so pessimistic all the time. Why does everybody got to complain so much? No, they're kind of right. So, that is the Sony State of Play. Kind of the big thing from Tokyo Game Show. And, based on my analysis of that, you can see that there wasn't that much to garner from the Tokyo Game Show. Next up, Randy Pitchford, the king of Crashouts, at it again. Borderlands 4 released over the past 2 weeks, Big success. 2.5 million in sales at the time of recording that I'm seeing. 300,000 players concurrently on Steam at its peak. That's a pretty good deal. It's one of those things that, everybody kind of discounts in the hardcore gaming scene. Nobody is like excited about Borderlands. Nobody is talking about it. Everybody's like, I didn't really like Borderlands that much. It's not that good of a game. And then, the movie comes out and it's like super mid and everybody's like, oh, dude, of course, because Borderlands sucks, tee-hee. And it's like, I'm over here like, bro, if you look at the sales number for these games, you will realize that there is a ridiculously huge audience for this IP. It is one of the most successful video game IP of all time. And like this game, like Borderlands 4, I didn't know anything about it going into its release, and I was like, it will be a massive success. Like, it's a guaranteed success. This is one of those franchises that even if it is mid, even if it is not even that good, it will be a massive success. Just because of the fact that it is Borderlands, and it for some reason has racked up an extremely large casual crowd that will play it no matter what. And like, I do think that these games are a turn your brain off, like fine time, especially if you're with friends. But like, this game got decent reviews, actually reviewed higher than I expected it to. Did not seem to be blowing anybody away, but like, it is another Borderlands game and they did not mess it up, except for one little thing. Performance issues. A lot of reports of performance issues on PC specifically. Even had a friend, I was talking with a friend about it, and he was like, oh yeah, dude, my game, it just crashes once I play it for too long, which is like not an uncommon report. That is something that has been reported very frequently, is the game will just like kind of build up code over time and just die, which is like probably a signal that it may not be very well optimized. But CEO of Gearbox, Randy Pitchford, everyone's favorite gaming personality, had something else to say about it. So he went on Twitter, as he does, and he had a few choice quotes. So I'm going to go through them. Here we go. We're going to quote. There's several of them, so give me a minute here. All of them kind of lead up to like the big main point. So in response to all of these accusations that Borderlands 4 is not optimized well for PC, quote, every PC gamer must accept the reality of the relationship between their hardware and what the software they are running is doing. So if you haven't already guessed, this is what Randy's going with. He's going with, hey, your PC sucks, or your settings are not optimized correctly, or something like that. It is not a Borderlands problem. It's a you problem, baby. Okay, next up, quote, we made an amazing and fun, huge looter shooter, I don't know why I stumbled over that one, campaign game. The game is pretty dang optimal, which means that the software is doing what we want without wasteful cycles and bad processes. With Borderlands 4, every PC gamer has a lot of tools to balance their preferences between FPS, resolution, and rendering features. If you aren't happy with the balance between these things you are experiencing, please tune to your preferences using the tools available to you. So doubling and tripling down on like, hey, it's a you problem, baby. And this is where it kind of goes off the rails. So he goes, it is a mistake to believe or expect that PCs between minimum specifications and recommended specification can achieve all of the extremely high frame rate, maximum ultra features, and extremely high resolution. And this is the big one that gets me, quote, if the last post makes you have negative reactions, I bet you have emotions and expectations that you feel aren't sufficiently attended to. I'm sorry. Yikes. So, I mean, this is just, I don't know what makes Randy Pitchford feel like he should do this. This is not the first. It will not be the last time. I mean, obviously, before Borderlands came out, there was the whole discussion of like, what will Borderlands 4 cost? And it's like, Randy Pitchford was like, well, you should just get another job, poor boy. Get a paper route. Go work at McDonald's, flip some burgers, earn some extra cash so you can afford Borderlands 4. I think that was like a bit. I think people went a little overboard with that statement. I understand what Randy Pitchford meant, but the optics behind it are really bad. This is not the first time, though, Randy Pitchford has said something that's like, you just need to keep your mouth shut. He's clearly a very eccentric personality, and I don't know, dude. It's kind of one of those things that, like, somebody just needs to take away his freaking Twitter profile. Just take away his password, get his login out of there, and keep him away from it. Like, he's the CEO of a very successful business, and you just don't need this kind of bad press for, like, a game that, honestly, and I think kind of the big thing here is that I really want to hone into, this game was going to be a success no matter what. Like, I feel like these statements are, Randy Pitchford trying to make excuses for something that clearly they didn't do right. And I guess I should continue on here. Digital Foundry did PC performance specs for it, and if you don't know, Digital Foundry is like the go-to for like elitist, like elitist PC spec talk, which like everybody likes to reference, but I don't think 1% of the gaming population actually cares about. But like still, they are like the authority on this stuff. And they tested it on a very high-end PC, and they said that they found stuttering, 30 FPS cutscenes, and frame rate drops, and some other pervasive issues. So the game is clearly, it is not a hardware problem. Like this is a software issue. For whatever reason, it's not optimized well. A lot of people are blaming Unreal Engine 5. I see a lot of accusations around that. A lot of games are developed on Unreal Engine 5, and I don't see that many complaints about that many games developed on Unreal Engine 5. So I would say it's probably their problem, not the engine. I mean, sure, the engine could probably be contributing to that, but like at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of, like, also they probably just didn't optimize it well. That's probably a dual issue, if anything. So obviously not insanely accurate from Randy. Following that, only a few days later, breaking news, Borderlands 4 delayed indefinitely on the Switch. 1 week before it was supposed to come out, on October 3rd, Borderlands PR came out and said, hey, we are issuing refunds. We are not going to be able to put this game out on October 3rd. Heck, we don't even know when we're going to be taking it, or when we're going to be able to put it back on store shelves, because it, for some reason, is not ready. Their quote for this is, quote, "We do not take this decision lightly, but are committed to ensuring we deliver the best possible experience to our fans, and the game needs additional development and polish time to do that." I think, personally, maybe I'm uneducated, maybe I'm just brute forcing this, but that sounds like it is unoptimized. That sounds like it needs more polish. That's when I hear anything, optimization is like one of the first things that comes to mind when you say polish. Additional development and polish sounds like we got a lot of bugs. It is not running very well on the Switch 2, and we need to make sure it does. And the only way to do that is to extend its development cycle indefinitely. Yeah, something tells me just the game from a fundamental level is not really well off. It also tells me that, like, guess what? The Switch 2 isn't as powerful as people have been making it out to be, which was always weird to me. I mean, I get it's a handheld device, and I think people often conflate the two of like, well, it's a powerful handheld device for what it is. And it's like, well, comparative to any console that's on the market right now, it's still very weak. So very, I think just a double whammy there for Borderlands in that way. But I think it's, I think it proves the point. Like, yeah, it's silly that we ever thought it wasn't it was optimized correctly. This is, of course, the guy who had squirter porn on his flash drive, was caught with it in a public setting, and then said that it was magical. The reason he had that on a company flash drive was because it was magical how the women were able to do that. Astounding, surely. Yeah, he's a character. He's a character. I don't think there's any getting rid of him. I think he's just, he's going to keep doing it. He's going to keep doing it and doing it and doing it, and he's going to keep getting reprimanded, and nothing's going to happen. So, I don't know. It's what happens when you're too big to fail, right? Is just you get to do what you want, baby. You get to do what you want. And I think Borderlands is too big to fail. You can see that by the sales numbers. So, I think everybody complaining about Randy Pitchford, it's always comical. We like to shine a spotlight on the clown, right? It's funny, but it doesn't mean anything. It's to me, it's just a thing for the hardcore community to talk about. It really doesn't amount to anything serious, or at least it won't amount to anything serious. So, next up, Microsoft raises prices on the Xbox consoles again in this economy. Come on, Microsoft, you know better than that. This is only 5 months after their previous increase. So we've been talking about on the podcast, tariffs being a thing, making all sorts of things go up. Specifically, the Switch peripherals, the Switch 1 and Switch peripherals have all gone up in price. PlayStation consoles have all gone up in price. Xbox consoles 5 months ago went up in price. Guess what happened again? They went up again. First increase 5 months ago for the Xbox Series X and S was about $100 and $80 respectively for each one. Now we are going to add a $20 increase to the Xbox Series S and let's see here, and a $50 increase to the Series X. And the X 2TB Galaxy is going to get a $70 price increase. So, what do we got for the totals here? We have, for the Xbox Series S, 512 gigabytes, we have $399.99. It was $299 5 months ago. Xbox Series S, 1 terabyte, we have $450 now. It was $100 less 5 months ago. Series X Digital, we have $600. It was $150 less 5 months ago. Xbox Series S, $650. It was $150 less. And then, of course, the X 2 terabyte Galaxy Black is $800 now. It was $300 less 5 months ago. Yoicks. This is, of course, attributed to, quote, changes in the macroeconomic environment, which is code for tariffs, adoy. No duh. It is not surprising at all to hear that. It's surprising to see 2 price increases in the span of 6 months. I saw a post the other day that was essentially somebody invest in consoles, like me in 2020 or 2060, with my Xbox Series X. And it's like rolling in money because, of course, the price is just going to continue to go up. And so, it's basically like investing in a stock. Comical that we are used to an environment where prices for these consoles go down over time. Continue to say that every time I talk about one of these stories, and it is rather comical to continue to see them go up. I have no idea how Xbox expects to get away with this, and I think the point is they don't expect to either. They know nobody wants to buy these things. They are trying to kill off I don't know if they're trying to kill off their console market, but they want to they want to shift entirely to Game Pass, which is, to me, so weird to even think that they're considering making another generation of console after this. Why? Especially if this trend continues, this makes Xboxes more expensive than a PlayStation 5 Pro. Why would you buy an Xbox when you can get a PlayStation 5 Pro, the highest end model, for cheaper than an Xbox, and you can play all of Microsoft's games on a PlayStation? Or at least you will be, certainly, as we've discussed earlier, every Microsoft IP seems to be trickling down into Sony territory. So, like, what's the point? Or you can get a PC, even better. You know, most of Sony's IP, their big games are starting to trickle down to PC. So why not go to PC? You know? Like, it makes no sense to invest in an Xbox at all. So, cool. That's a good investment, I guess. But, you know, it is crazy to see a double price increase. You know, why? I don't know. I mean, Trump didn't increase tariffs again. You know, like, what happened here? I'd love to know the process, the thought process as to why a second increase was necessary. But I ain't no economist, so I don't know. Next up, Doug Bowser stepping down from Nintendo of America president position and COO. These are some stories that are never very entertaining, but I do think that they are very, well, they're important. I mean, they are legitimately important stuff. So obviously we know Doug Bowser as the guy who has the same name as the Mario villain, and we all like to make fun of that and remember how we don't seem to think he's as charming as Reggie Fils-Aimé, and there aren't any memes of him, but there are still memes of Reggie Fils-Aimé that people use regularly. Yeah, Doug doesn't have a lot on his resume that makes him like one of the more iconic characters of Nintendo's power people. But you know, that's because in a lot of ways, he's president of Nintendo America. Okay? Nintendo is a Japanese-owned company. I'm sure everybody knows that. So like Nintendo of America is kind of a minor player in the grand scheme of things. Sure, they're doing a lot over here in America. They're making sure everybody knows about everything and everything's running smooth, whatever the case is. But the people making the games, that people that you really care about, people making the, you know, grand overall business design and schemes and, you know, planning decisions, those guys are in Japan. You know, those guys are not in America. So, who will be taking this man's place? Well, it's Devon Pritchard. She's a 19-year Nintendo vet and the first female to take the position. And she was former Nintendo America's Vice President of Revenue, Marketing, and Consumer Experience. So, you know, sounds important enough. I don't know how important this position really is in terms of how ground-shaking, earth-shattering of decisions they're going to be making. They will be, certainly, but like I said, you know, most of the big things you're going to see are going to be coming from Japan. Alongside that, we have Satoru Shibata. So he's the former Nintendo of Europe president, and so she won't be taking over as CEO. She'll be taking over as COO, and so he'll be stepping in as the CEO of Nintendo America. So, you know, in case you were wondering. So, you know, Doug Bowser wasn't the CEO. He was COO. So, you know, COO is Chief Operations Officer, CEO Executive. So, you know, they do have different responsibilities. A lot of it's, you know, C-level, you know, so they're all kind of working towards the same end, but, you know, operations is a little bit different. I'm not going to get into the details because I don't really know. But it's just something worth noting that those are going to be your big dogs now for Nintendo of America. So, you know, good old Doug Bowser, say goodbye, wish him goodbye. Now we have a woman there, which is cool. Progressive, right? But we don't have anybody named after a Mario character. So maybe she can change her name to, like, Daisy or, I don't know, Peach. That just seems unnatural, but maybe Devon Peach? Just keep the P, you know? That sounds like that could work. But anyway, moving on. My final story is a teeny tiny one. It's so small, but it's something I really want to talk about because it's my podcast, gosh darn it. And you know what? I feel like I need to start throwing in stories every once in a while that, like, I enjoy. I just find interesting, even though they're not these earth-shattering stories that, like, everybody's talking about. And for this one, its PlayStation trophies can now lead to real-life merchandise with Ghost of Tsushima's line of merch. So this is not like an original idea per se, but essentially, and Sony's kind of toyed with the idea of this in the past, but if you have the Platinum Trophy or the Gold Trophy for Ghost of Tsushima, you can link your profile to like a marketplace, your PlayStation profile to like Sony's marketplace, and it'll verify that you have those trophies, and if you do, then you'll have access to buy specific merchandise items. So they have 2 on offer. One is a t-shirt for $30, and it is for completing the game. So if you get the trophy for completing the game, you can then buy the shirt. And then the other is a pin, a collectible pin for $25, like a wearable pin or whatever, not like a writing pin. Don't know why I have to clarify that, but I just, in case you were wondering. But it's $25, and that's for getting the Platinum Trophy, so all of the trophies in the game, more or less 100%ing it. And you have until December 31st to either get the trophies or get the merch, one of the two. I think this is really cool. Like, I like the idea because I am really ingrained in the trophy ecosystem for PlayStation. I love the metagame of trophies. I think it's super fun to collect them. I think it's super, like I love showing off like, oh, dude, I have so many trophies because I am a gamer that puts in a lot of time and a lot of effort into these games. And like, I want to be able to prove that. And so like, I think that's really cool. This is just an extension of that. And to me, I love limited collectible stuff. I love rare items that like only a certain number of people can have. I know, right? I'm a freaking capitalist sheep. It's a marketing tactic and I fall for it hook, line, and sinker. But like in this case, I'm going to level with you. If it was another game, I probably wouldn't care. But because it's Ghost of Tsushima, I do. 1, because I'm a huge weeb, sure. But 2 is because Sucker Punch, which I'm sure I've mentioned on the podcast before, is my favorite development studio. I grew up with Sly Cooper. It was really my first love of video games that really launched me into loving video games. Sly 3 is my favorite game of all time. I love Infamous. Infamous 2 is fantastic. One of my favorite games ever as well. And then, of course, Ghost of Tsushima is just a fun time as a weeboo. It's just, you really can't ask for a better Japanese game, exploring Japanese countryside as a samurai. Like, that's just so cool. It's just cool in concept. Really looking forward to Yote as well. But if it was for, like, I don't know, Call of Duty or something like that, some series that, like, I don't really have a massive connection with, like, I don't really care about that much, or, like, maybe Demon Souls, like Sony owns Demon Souls. Get the platinum for Demon Souls, and then you can get this collectible pin or something like that. I would not care because, like, I don't really care about that game as much, and I don't really care about that studio as much. And I know that's probably like, that's like opening up the floodgates for people to freaking hate on me. Like, you don't care about FromSoft, you don't care about Dark Souls. You suck. You're a filthy casual. Well, it is what it is. I like what I like. But like, I like Sucker Punch and I like Ghost of Tsushima. I have very fond memories of both of those things. So like, this is just an extension of that. And thank God I already have those trophies as well, because a time limit of December 31st may seem like a lot. It's like, well, you have a little more than 3 months to get it. It's like, bro, I don't have that time. Like, I've clearly learned recently I don't have that kind of time to put into just playing a freaking whatever it is 60-hour open world collectathon kind of game. Like, I just don't have that kind of time anymore, which I'm gonna have to make time for Yote. But like, you get it. It would be hard for me to make that call to go back and do that for an older game like that if I hadn't already really wanted to before now. But a lot of people are kind of attacking this for what it is, which is like, you're unlocking the privilege to pay money for stuff, like to give Sony more money. Like, this isn't a free item that you're able to just pick up, which is fair and I think a valid thing. So this is not the first time people have done this. I've heard Destiny has done a similar thing. You can purchase, real world rewards for making in-game accomplishments. I genuinely still think that's really cool. And like I'll be able to point to my shelf when I'm 80 years old and be like, yes, grandchild, you could only get that if you were a super pro gamer and got the platinum trophy in Ghost of Tsushima. And then he'll say, wow, granddaddy, you really are a pro gamer. And like that's more like Elmer Fudd. That's like Elmer Fudd was my grandson. But you get it. It's cool, right? I just think that's cool. I like limited edition stuff. I'm a sheep. I'm a capitalist pig. What can I say? But I just thought that was really cool. I wanted to shout that out. I wanted to talk about it. I honestly hope we see more stuff like that in the future, but only for games that I care about and games that I can get platinum trophies in. The platinum trophy for Ghost of Tsushima is also like pretty easy to get. But yeah. But that is all for the news. Now on to impressions. And this is a long time coming impressions segment. We are going to be talking about Metaphor Rephantazio, a very long JRPG from the makers of Persona. So this is the same team that's been working on the mainline Persona series. After Persona 5, they decided to move on to a new IP, which is great, I think. It was a good move. I think a lot of people had complaints of Persona being a little samey. Everybody was like, oh, I want to play as something that's not a high school kid anymore. I'm kind of sick of the high school setting. I want something else. Well, they moved on to something new entirely, which is like medieval kings, kind of political sabotage, all that other good stuff. Basically just a medieval knights and mages and all that good stuff. It's kind of what we're focusing on as a universe here. This is still following your typical Persona formula. The design here is very similar. You have, a certain number of days in the game that you can accomplish everything you want in. If you don't accomplish certain things by a certain time, then you lose. You have to kind of go back and retrace your steps and make sure you can succeed within that time limit. So you're always kind of juggling, like, oh, well, do I want to spend time with my party member? Do I want to level up in the dungeon? Do I want to proceed with the story? You kind of have to juggle all of that. It's always very anxiety-inducing. I've always hated it, and I've always used walkthroughs after my first Persona game to make sure I was getting access to all the content. I wasn't missing anything. But in this instance, we still have turn-based combat. We still have the time thing. We still have social links that you're pursuing over the course of the game. They've made a lot of tweaks here. They've made a lot of changes. I'm going to go into them all, but we're going to start from the top. What is this game even about? This game, like I said, follows the one day at a time formula. Kings and queens. We have at the beginning of the game, the king of a country is assassinated by a big bad man, and he casts a spell over the entire country that the most popular dude, the king of the prom, is going to be the real king for the first time. We're basically going to have an election, and that kind of kicks off this globe-trotting adventure where you're going around trying to gather followers to try and infiltrate the ranks of the guy who assassinated the king and save your best friend, who also just happens to be the prince of the kingdom and the rightful heir to the throne. Very interesting setup. But this is a very long JRPG, and one that it took me way longer than I thought to actually beat. It was quite the journey for me in more ways than one. I first started playing this game about a year ago. So a year ago, they launched the demo for the game, which was the first, basically the entire entryway to the game and the first dungeon, which is everything up to that point is very typical Persona. These long dungeons that take multiple days to complete. You have to kind of juggle time within that, limited amount. I didn't finish the demo because like I know I'm gonna beat the. I know I'm gonna play this game. It's getting great reviews, and I want to make sure that like when I come back, I haven't like gotten too far ahead, because last time when I did that with Persona 3, I started using a walkthrough too late in the game, and it totally effed me up. I had played like 10 days of the game before consulting a walkthrough to see what I should do, and that was too much time had passed for me to 100% the game at that point, which has always just rubbed me the wrong way. This game, by the way, is still like that. I used a game walkthrough from day one, and I still had like a few days left over, but that is completing every dungeon in one day, which is not how the game is designed at all. So like, still really frustrating that this game that's already like an 80-hour game is encouraging players to replay it pretty much off the jump if you want to see everything. It just seems like such a massive investment that like, if I'm willing to put 80 hours into your game up front, I should be able to experience everything and not have to replay it. It's not going to be a requirement for me to do that in order to see everything. Which like I still didn't 100% the game, because there's literally no way for you to do that. You have to level up everything to max level in order to get the final trophy for the game, and you just simply won't have, unless you are grinding for dozens of hours, you will not have the experience by the end of the game to do that. So there's just a finite amount of experience just going through the dungeons normally. So it isn't possible, right? So anyway, I played like the first 5 hours of the game, put it down, and came back to it. Which, by the way, major thank you to Sega for making demos for these massive games that they're putting out, like Yakuza and stuff, all these like 40-plus hour games. Like, they're like, yeah, we'll put out these demos and you can carry over the save file to like not have to replay these 5 hours of the game again. Holy crap, like that was such a godsend. Like 5 hours of my life back, that's, cannot put a price on that, right? So I come back like 6 months later. I get the game on Black Friday. I get it like a buy two get one free deal at GameStop for Black Friday. And I'm like, okay, cool. Play some games. Eventually I'm like, okay, it's time. It's time to sit down and play this game. And this was like a month before the Switch 2 came out. And I was like, bro, if I hunker down, if I play this game like nonstop for like a month, I think I can get it in. Because I think it took me about a month to get through Persona 3. And that was me like hunkering down, pretty much doing nothing but playing Persona 3 in my free time. So I was like, I know it's possible. I know I can do it. Let's get it done. Of course, life has different plans. So I started the game up and then like immediately got pushed, like I had something else come up. I couldn't get to it. And then the Switch 2 came out. And I was like, well, I'm not going to put the Switch 2, getting the Switch 2 day one, like on the back burner so I can play Metaphor Rephantazio. So it's like, okay, like I'll start playing other things. And I kept, then another game would come out and another game would come out. And it's like, okay, frick. Finally, like 4 months later, I'm like, I have to play and finish Metaphor Rephantazio. I cannot sit on this game any longer, because I am a firm believer that the longer you take a step away from a game, the likelihood of you never going back to it significantly increases. Because like every time I take a step away from a game, I'm like, oh man, I forgot how to freaking walk around. Like, I don't remember what's happening in the game anymore. Like, now I gotta play the game again so I can remember what the frick is even going on. How do I shoot? How do I jump? Like, what are the controls? Basic bullcrap, that you should normally just know if you're playing the game normally. But if you take months of a break off, you're just gonna naturally forget it. And honestly, it's just not as pleasant of an experience to deal with that kind of stuff either. And it's intimidating. It's just intimidating to have to go back into giant games like this and be like, well, I don't remember how half the mechanics work. Anyway, persevered. And I eventually sat back down to the game. And after I got past like that initial hump, I never put it back down. Even though I continued to have times where like I also had to take a step away from it. Another game came out, whatever. I eventually came back to it again. I had to go on like, trips or whatever. Couldn't devote time to it. I think it is a major testament to this game that I continued to come back to it, because I really did get hooked after that point. Going back to the demo, we're going through this chronologically, or at least I'm trying to. I'm sorry. I'm going to take a break for a second here. I know it seems like I'm kind of stammering a little bit. That's because I'm consulting my notes very frequently. For every one of these impressions, I try to have my notes handy so like I can make sure I'm talking about everything I want to, and I'm going to hit all the points I need. Normally, my notes, if it's like a game I really want to go dive deep into, it's like 2 pages long, 2 pages of notes. This game I have over 4 pages of notes for, because there's so much I want to get to. This game is massive, and I think it is worth talking about all of it. So I'm just jumping around because there's a lot I'm trying to really make sure I'm covering. But anyway, going back chronologically, the demo. So when I first played the demo, I was not blown away. I thought this was another Persona game. Production values were great, but the setting was different. Combat, structure, characters, dungeons, they all seemed pretty similar to me in comparison to like a Persona game. It's just another kind of coat of paint, really, right? So that's kind of what I really expected for the most part as well. Also in the demo, the game really pushes like the idea of racism a lot. Like, when I say like it pushes it really, really, really hard. Like, I remember even people talking about that back when the demo first came out, was like, I think this game may be about racism, because like the opening of this game in this demo is like nothing but like, I hate you because you're a different race than me. It's like so in your face. Like, yeah, this game's about racism. And it's so funny because that really just kind of pulls back really hard. Like after the first dungeon, like basically the end of the demo, the whole racism thing is like, yeah, it's a point. Like it happens, like it is something people talk about throughout the course of the game and is still a recurring theme. But, like, it is not, like, so ham-fisted and in your face. Like, it really is in your face during the demo. But like I said, pulls back after the opening hours, which is just kind of weird. They felt the need to really go that hard on racism that early on in the game and then just, like, not really do anything with it after that, or at least not anything, like, significant. There was some quality of life enhancements that I saw. So like the job class system, this game works on a job class system, and that kind of stood out to me, but it was really too early for me to make a judgment call on pretty much any of it. Like this is an 80-hour game. I was only 5 hours in pretty much. So everybody likes to make the joke like, oh, well, I was only at the tutorial. I'm 10 hours in. I just barely made it out of the tutorial. Like, there is some truth to that. Like, it is a common joke because, it's freaking true. So, like, basically, what I'm trying to say here is I had no idea what the frick this game was. I think my initial impressions of the demo were very, very far off from what I ended up feeling. Maybe not very, very far off, but, like, they were far off from what I felt, by the time I ended up finishing the game, and it kind of delved into everything and really soaked it all in and seen what everything the game had to offer. So, now, fast forward, we come back, I pick up the game, I'm actually starting to play it for realsies on a copy that's not just like a limited slice of the game, right? So I immediately open the walkthrough. I know Persona 3 Reload gave me very little wiggle room to see everything in the game, and so like I'm like, okay, I gotta start playing this game with a walkthrough immediately to make sure I can see all the content, I can do all the social links, and make sure I'm not, missing any content, because I think that's so annoying. I play that much of a game and I can't even see everything. That happened to me in Persona 5. I was trying to evenly distribute the people I was seeing, so I was like never maxing out anybody's social link, and at the end of the game I had no romantic interest. I was like, do I get to date anyone in this game? And yeah, you do get to date people in Persona 5, but only if their social link is high enough. And because I didn't manage my time well enough, and I freaking was trying to evenly distribute everybody's social link, I didn't ever have the ability to do that. So very frustrating. after putting 120 plus hours into Persona 5, because that game is even longer. Insane. But anyway, I open up the walkthrough, and the walkthrough immediately is like, you need to play on the easiest difficulty. And I was like, I mean, I don't really want to do that. You know, like, I get it. And I did that with Persona 3 because, like, I knew that, okay, we got to get into the design of Persona 3 to really fully articulate this. But essentially, like, the only thing that the difficulty in Persona was really preventing you from doing was just progressing in a number of days. Like, the combat in Persona 3 is not difficult. And, like, really what makes it difficult is just, you know, the magic you have and, like, then the moves that you can perform within, you know, like a certain amount of time in a dungeon, right? So, like, knocking down the difficulty didn't really make the game different outside of it just gave me more time outside of a dungeon because I could get through a dungeon faster. Combat has never been a very strong suit within the Persona series to me at all. But anyway, the problem with this is that the easiest difficulty in the game is, and I hate when developers do this, I do not know why they feel the need to do this, is it locks you in. So if you go to the easiest, so there's 4 difficulties in Metaphor Rephantazio. You got hard, you got normal, you got easy, and then you got story. And the walkthrough was like, you need to play on story difficulty. And I was like, bro, okay. I select it, and it's like, if you select this difficulty, you will never be able to switch it off. Like, you are stuck on it. And I'm like, whoa. I mean, I like the option of being able to switch it off. Like, what if I get to a boss fight or something, and I'm like, I really want to experience this boss fight on the normal difficulty. That would be a lot more satisfying. I can't do that? Why? And it's like, well, because we're turning down the difficulty so much, it's not cool, bro. You shouldn't be playing on this difficulty. I'm like, don't punish me. Don't punish me for choosing an easier difficulty than you want me to be playing on. Like, just don't give me the option to play on that difficulty if you freaking hate me playing on it that much. Like, I don't know. It kind of goes back to the typical conversation you have about, like, Bloodborne or whatever the freaking From Software game having an easy difficulty. It's like, why not? Like I don't know. Like, what's wrong with other people playing the game the way they like? I don't know. I guess it's like not an art. It's not art enough, you know? You're missing the meaning of the developer and its intended experience. It's like, okay, who gives a frick? Like, you know, like, I can still get that normal experience if I play on the normal difficulty. Just give me, for somebody else like me who doesn't want to do that, just give me an easier difficulty and I'll have a fun time. Anyway, long tangent, right? That's neither here nor there. Anyways, it is probably the most agonizing decision I had to make in a long time with my video games, because I was like, I looked at myself in the mirror. I was like, I ain't no baby. I ain't no coward. I can do it, but, like, the walkthrough is telling me that I'll miss out on things if I don't. And I had to basically really come to terms with, like, what do I value more in these games? Do I value the combat? Do I value the difficulty and the experience? Or do I value the relationships I have with party members, the content that I'm seeing, the world? Like, what do I really value more? And I think it was pretty obvious to me pretty quickly. I really valued my party members more. I value the story. I value all that. So I would much rather see that. And, you know, like, that's what I went with. I did the unthinkable, and I did the lowest difficulty imaginable. And that was because the first dungeon was taking me a lot longer than I assumed it would, because the first dungeon is the longest dungeon in the game, weirdly. It takes a really long time to get through. It takes multiple days. And so I was like, okay, clearly the rest of the dungeons are going to be like this too, and there is no way. Like, I was scrimping and fighting, because early on in the game you don't have skills that, like, give you magic or anything back. So, like, later on in the game you get those, and it becomes a lot easier to stay in a dungeon longer. But at the beginning of the game you don't have any of that. So, like, I was really struggling to stay in this really long dungeon, and I was like, oh my gosh, if this is what the game is, I'm not, like, this is way too hard to try and beat this dungeon in one day. I can't do it. So I have to knock the difficulty down. And then after that, frickin' none of the dungeons are anywhere near that long. And it's like, oh, well, I probably could have done it on like easy difficulty and not story difficulty. So like I really kind of effed up there. Like that was, but I didn't know with the information I had and the walkthrough telling me like you just need to play on the easiest difficulty. It's like, oh, okay. Kind of effed up there. I would recommend playing the game on easy difficulty. If you're like me, you don't need to play it on story difficulty. That first dungeon's probably going to be a really big slog. But beyond that, you're going to be fine. But anyway, game's dungeons are ultimately much shorter than previous titles, and I kind of wished I toughed it out. That being said, after you finish the first main dungeon, you get sent to the actual world. And that is where the story and the game actually starts. And this is, to put into perspective, like 10 plus hours into the game. Took me about 70 hours to beat it. So like a seventh into the game, I finally got to a point where I was like doing what I expected to be doing within the full story of the game. And like, I remember beating the game and looking back at those opening hours and I was like, yeah, why did we spend so long like not focusing on the main component of the game? Like, how did they even accomplish that? And they do. Oh, they find a way. But like once you get on your like globe-trotting adventure and you join the race to like as an underdog candidate to be king of the country, that's where this game really got its hooks into me. I loved the story. I loved how it was told. You know, you're competing against all these other would-be candidates. They all have their own kind of way of doing things. You're like interacting with them on the map. Like you're all kind of running over to different countries and different areas within the country to kind of help people and gain followers and like, you know, win these competitions that move you up in the rankings and allow you to kind of proceed to the next round of candidates. And, you know, like you're like interacting with them and having battles with them like while you're traveling. I loved it. I thought it's a great premise. It just sucks that it takes so long to really get to that point in the game. And I have always been and I always will be like it gets good after like 30 hours. Just tough it out. Like, oh, well, that game it's really good. It just, you really got to tough out the first like 80 hours of it. And then you'll have a lot of fun. Like, I think that is I honestly, if I ever hear you say that, I'm like, you don't need to be recommending me this game. Like, you have just an objectively bad opinion. Like, it's just wrong for you to do that. In this game, those 10 hours are fine. Like, they're not bad. Like, I know a lot of people would say, like, Final Fantasy 13 is, like, the standard typical example for this. Is like, well, the first 20 hours of the game suck, sure. But then, it opens up, and, you kind of have a good time after that. And it's like, okay, well, this is like not bad. Like it's still good. Like the opening of this game the opening 10 hours are like good, but like it really gets great after the first 10 hours. So like I understand if you're like, well, 10 hours, that's a little bit hard for me to stomach, man. I don't know. I don't got that much time. It's like, I get it, but it's not bad. Like the opening hours aren't bad. So you're really just getting through a good game to get to the great part, right? So that's kind of how I at least envision it. Anyway, I really enjoyed the world I was exploring. The art and the production values are through the roof. I mean, you play Persona 5, you'll know this. Like they're the kings of UI. They're the kings of production value. And that goes into every corner of this game. It's a good segue to say the UI is great. The soundtrack is great. And the production value overall is great. But I think Persona 5 still has a way stronger aesthetic and design overall, and it's hard to say. It's just hard to say this isn't quality though. Like it is really, really good. The soundtrack's good, and it fits your medieval vibe. Kind of like you got that guttural chanting in the background. That's kind of like the defining feature of this soundtrack. But I'm not going to listen to this game's soundtrack probably ever again, like anytime soon. But But like I will always listen to the Persona games soundtrack, like all of them. Like Persona 3 has some great tracks, Persona 4 has some excellent tracks, Persona 5 has the best soundtrack probably in any video game ever. So like, you know, this is not meeting that standard, but I think if you put like jazzy J-pop in this game, it would kind of feel out of place. And like, so I understand the move they made here. It's still a solid soundtrack. It's just like comparative to their previous works, we could probably have made some more memorable, catchy tunes. But you know, that's, you know, subjective, I suppose. Game feels way more streamlined than the Persona games, and that's for several reasons. There are way fewer days in this game, so Persona games normally take place over an entire year. So you got 365 days, and, you know, they skip some here and there to kind of, you know, shorten it a little bit, so it's not 365 days, but it takes place over the course of an entire year. This one is like 3 to 4 months. So, like, days are a little bit longer, and, you know, like, events that are happening within those days are a little bit longer, but you have way less days. Day cycle is still as addictive as ever. I love the progress you get of just knocking out a day. I mean, like, I did something that was valuable in that one day, and I think that's really awesome. Social connections in this game are 10 ranks, so you have to spend 10 days with it, or 8 days, excuse me, 8 days. You have to spend 8 days with a social connection in order to fully rank them up. In Persona, it was 10, so a lot fewer. It adds up, and there's a lot fewer connections a lot fewer social connections in general, right? So, you know, not only do you have fewer days you have to spend with a social connection, but there's a lot fewer of them in general to spend with. That, and finally, dungeons are no longer these big one-offs that you kind of have to rush through, like, and instead are broken up into many other smaller dungeons with much better pacing. So, you know, that was always kind of an issue I had with Persona. I can't even begin to tell you how shocked I was when I felt like all these changes had been made. But it's amazing. You don't see Japanese developers really try to reinvent or change the wheel if it, you know, don't fix it if it ain't broke. A lot of Japanese game design is kind of steeped in traditionalism. You know, like, why change this? You know, like, this is how it's always been, or whatever the case is. And to see them clearly going through this series, specifically Persona 3, 4, and 5, and say, hey, you know, can we do this better? Is this possibly something that could be tweaked and improved? That's something you don't really see a lot of from Japanese developers, and I am really stunned that this is, like, where they went with it, and really proud that they did, and I think it really pays off. Back to the social connections. Social connections in Persona games always felt padded, and honestly, a lot of them bored the frick out of me. You know, I didn't want to spend 10 days talking to an old couple about their dead son's tree. Like, and like, not even all 10 of those days were talking about the dead son's tree. It's just like talking to them, like, hey, here's a cookie, boy. And like, that's like an entire social link in Persona 3. And I'm not even exaggerating that. And, you know, like that, there's like 15 million of them. And like half of them are all filler, and they're not interesting. They're boring as frick. And like, you still have to freaking do them because they're connected to, you know, like, you know, particular, you know, summons that you want to use and classes that you want to use. So you have to freaking do it. And it's just like, ah, frick, you know, like, very unfortunate. In this one, social connections are far more interesting. Some of them, you know, may have dragged a little bit, you know, but in this, you know, like, I remembered the vast majority of them. Persona, I don't even freaking remember half of the ones that are in Persona 3. You know, they're not very interesting. But, like, I genuinely enjoyed some of the stories and some of the characters that I got to interact with in Metaphor Rephantazio. I think that's something that needs to be applauded. You know, they also, when you spend time with these guys, they actually give you, like, good rewards, like useful stuff. Like in Persona, it's always like, well, now you get more experience when you know, make a persona with this particular, you know, like, social link. And it's like, okay, cool. I guess, like that's nice. I guess it, prevents me from having to grind a little bit with this thing before I really get the most out of it. But like, that's not really a huge boon to me. And then it's like, this one's like, well, you can now do multiple things in a day, or like now you can heal more efficiently, or now you're going to get an XP boost like all the time. And like, like it's like legitimately valuable things that by the end of the game, I was like, dang, how did I live without half of this stuff that I got from social links, which is so nice to have. With less days overall, it felt like every day mattered. I always felt like I had something I knew I needed to do. There was some objective I needed to accomplish. Where in days of Persona, I always felt like there were some days it was just like, I guess I'll go watch a movie or something because, I got to up my intelligence, and so it's like, okay, I'll just throw that day away because all of my social links aren't really available and, school's not in session today, and so I can't go into the dungeon. And it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll just do some random bullcrap to increase a stat here or there. And here I was like, nah, dude, like I gotta plan out my time. I gotta go to this dungeon. I gotta go do this over here. I gotta spend time with this character. I gotta up this. Like I always felt like something I was doing was necessary and was valuable and not a waste of my time, which is massive. Dungeon structure here is amazing, and it's kind of crazy they didn't do this in any other Persona game. Persona games are known for their deep dungeons. They got deep dives, like Persona 3, I think is almost like the worst way they ever did it, but I'm sorry to compare it so much to Persona 3 because, like, that's just the most recent one I played because Reload came out last year. But, like, it was like a 100-plus floor dungeon that you just basically pegged away at for an entire game, and it just felt like a slog. Like, it was just like, okay, just bum rush it to the next, to the end of this floor so I can just go up. I'm just so done with this. But in this game, each dungeon outside of a small few can be completed in 1 to 2 days, and that really breaks up the pacing. Outside it, like I said, it's not like Persona where you're plowing away at this million floor dungeon for multiple days. I would just go hours and hours in a dungeon for Persona, and when I would complete it, then I would be like, well, now I don't have anything else to do because there's no side missions to go and do in a dungeon. So like, I've reached the maximum I can go in this dungeon for now. So I guess I'll just force my way through all these like like social link stuff. And, I would then get OD'd on social link stuff, and then I'd have to go back and do dungeon again. And it always felt like it wasn't paced very well. It wasn't broken up at all. You were really encouraged to plow through the dungeon really fast and then have all this time to focus on Persona stuff and then have to go back into the dungeon again and plow through that. So it just never felt even paced. It never felt even keel and balanced. But here, this is a non-issue. The dungeons are now shorter, which is great, and they also have like gimmicks in each one of them that make each dungeon different. Persona 5 kind of dabbled with this a little bit, but like in this one, in one you have like a maze that you have to navigate. In another, you're kind of doing like a stealth operation where you have to avoid like being seen by like a boss. Another one is like a boss rush where like you have to do intel, you have to gather intel outside of the dungeon to know like what bosses are weak to so you can efficiently beat them in like one turn, because if you don't, like it will alert everybody in the dungeon. Like it's trying to make these things a lot more interesting, and I really appreciate that. Next up, tying into that obviously is combat. So one of the main issues I've always had with Persona's combat is how most of your party was always one note. It would lead to a lot of situations where you're fighting a boss and you can only really bring in like one specific party member because their moves, strengths, and weaknesses, were all static. So like, kind of like what I'm referring to, I remember in Persona, I believe it was 5, I went into a boss fight and Ryuji, like the boss fight, he's like only has lightning moves, and the boss is immune to lightning moves. And it's like, well, Ryuji can learn nothing other than lightning moves, so he is completely worthless for this boss fight. And you're basically like, well, I guess I'll just take him out and not use him. Or like sometimes like an entire floor will have enemies that are weak to a specific attack, and it's like, well, they're all weak to fire. And it's like, oh, well, that character in my party has only fire moves, so I should probably bring them with my party. And like it made it so like, you know, the whole goal of this was to make each character have a role. Like, oh, well, that's your fire character. That's if you're looking for a guy who's got fire moves, that's that one. And then it also double added an incentive to make the protagonist seem really cool, because the protagonist can learn any move. It can have any move. It can have a million different moves, a lot of different moves. So, like, you know, it made the protagonist feel really powerful, and the protagonist in those games is a self-insert character, so you're supposed to feel really cool because you can do a lot of cool stuff and nobody else can. So, you know, but like, it really made the combat feel really one note. It made it feel like most everything was really hinging on the protagonist to get most everything done. Everyone else was just kind of dealing chip damage that, like, hopefully they were weak to that or hopefully they were strong to that. Just kind of depended. You know, but in this, they've introduced the job class system. So gone are the days where you have to rely on this stupid system where only one character is really valuable in like a boss fight or something like that, because you have job classes now. So each member can be swapped out for a class that's more useful. Not only that, but it actually makes grinding fun. That's right, I said it. Grinding can be fun in this game, because for each time you max out a job class with a character, they get a permanent stat increase, so you're incentivized to master all of the classes with everybody. So this led me to grinding in dungeons for hours and hours and hours just to get a quick dopamine hit of leveling up and getting job classes, you know, higher and higher, which was normally quick and easy to do because there's so many job classes. And leveling up lower job classes obviously takes less XP, so I was leveling up left and right, and if one character wasn't leveling up, it meant another one was, so you were always leveling up, and it always made me feel like I was progressing and, you know, like making very good improvements to my characters overall. These job classes also do a good job of splitting up the abilities that you normally see in the Persona series, so like, in this instance, we have like all of the debuff moves is like a part of the Jester class. Like that's the only move he can do, is like just debuffing people. And one party member or one job class is only buff moves, so it only increases stats for your party. And it makes basically each job class feel unique and makes it feel like you can really strategize with the people and the job classes that you have. And, you know, initially I was like, why would I ever have the debuff guy in my party? Like, that's stupid as frick. Why would I not just try to beat the frick out of everything and do high damage? And, like, towards the end of the game, you obviously start hitting a lot of harder bosses, and, like, you really start having to incorporate that strategy of, well, yeah, I really need to debuff this guy because he has a lot of moves that are buffing him, and, you know, like, vice versa kind of deal. So it really made me actually start to think about, like, okay, what should my party composition be and which party members would be best to take on those roles? Because I initially thought, oh, well, that just makes all of these characters really, like, it kind of almost makes the same problem occur, right? Because now every character can be every class. And it's like, well, now nobody's special, right? It's the Incredibles problem, right? If everyone is super, no one is, you know, or no one will be. But, like, in this case, it really comes down to stats. So you can't, when a character levels up in general, like just the character, not the job class, they get, like, an increase to stats of, like, obviously, you know, your magic, your strength, your endurance, that kind of thing. And certain classes pair well with those particular stats. So, like, for instance, Heisme is a character that you get within the game, and he has, like, an enormous amount of agility. It's, like, crazy. Like, he has, like, no other stat other than agility, and nobody else on your entire party composition has that. And you can't choose where those stats go. It's automatically assigned. So, like, as you go, you learn, oh, well, this party, really those moves are a lot more effective if you have a very high agility rate or agility stat. And so it's like, oh well, dang, he has really high agility, so he's a really OP character now when he's using that skill, he's using those skills in that class, because his stats are really high there. So like I was like, okay, now every character really does seem like they have a point, like a purpose. And like that also ties into every class, or every character has a super class that they can unlock. This is admittedly toward the end of the game, so like, it's not really a majority of the game you're going to be dealing with this, but like towards the last dungeon or so, last 2 dungeons probably, you get access to like ultimate classes, and like you can basically get like a super powerful class for that particular character, and they become OP as frick, and it's really awesome. And they're the only character in your entire party that can use that particular class. I truly believe that to make a great JRPG, you need a great story and great characters. That is a segue in this note that I did not establish very well, but that's true. Like my big thing about every JRPG is story and characters. I think if you're going to be spending a million bazillion hours in a game, you really need to be able to invest yourself in the world and characters and feel like by the time you come out, you lived in that world and these guys are your freaking best friends. I think in the case of this game, it actually is really good and trickles in very well. In Persona 5, my main complaint was the cast, specifically one. A lot of them simply were not memorable or fun enough to hang out with for 100+ hours. 120 hours, over 120 hours was how long it took me to beat Persona 5. And by the end of the time I was done with it, I was like, yo, I feel like I don't know half of these party members very well, and I feel like I don't like half of these party members either. So that made me feel like I just didn't like the game very much. Some cast members were introduced way too late, and you ultimately never really get to know them, even though you spend like 40 hours with them or whatever. Like, they just never actually feel like they meld into the cast. Like, the final party member you get in Persona 5 is like some rich chick who I don't even remember the name of, because I never felt very attached to her. And I don't know, she just kind of comes into the game because but she's introduced into the game so late, and she's not built up in any way throughout the course of the game, that she just feels like a really weird tacked on party member. And I don't think anybody really likes her that much at all because of it. Not so here. I thought the vast majority of the cast were likable, introduced in a very interesting way. Like, I almost would, this is a really strong comparison, I know, and I don't think it's done anywhere near as this, but it almost reminded me of like Mass Effect 2 or like a BioWare game, where like you're being introduced to these party members, and it's like the introduction to to their character is so strong that it makes the character like good no matter what. Like, I think Heisme is like probably my favorite character in the game, and his intro is so good, and he's such a cool character that like I loved him for the rest of the game. Even though he doesn't really do anything for the rest of the game, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I think he's cool already, and that's all I really need, in order for that to be the case. A lot of other, like, party members are introduced over the course of the game, and, then, after a long time of being around them, they eventually kind of make their way into the party, and I think that is how all JRPGs need to add cast members over the course of a game. To avoid that exact problem that I was talking about with Persona 5, you need that kind of, that trickle-down effect, I suppose. I think the Persona team has never really had a huge strength with narratives. The story for Persona 4 is like the closest thing I think that the series comes to having like a good narrative. And even, look, Persona 4 is my favorite JRPG ever, and I even think that story is like fairly sparse. Like, it's not really a lot of story in that game. This story, however, is my clear favorite from the studio. It still could be better, but there are, there's some twists that are still obvious and ham-fisted, like the church being evil, because it's a JRPG, so like the church has to be evil. Certain characters, have a One Piece style betrayal, and that is me totally taking a stab at One Piece. Come at me. But essentially, like, a character like that was very overtly good is like, well, now I'm evil because I'm beating up a puppy, and it's like, oh well, okay. Or it's like some character that's like, well, I'm evil because I'm beating up a puppy, but now I'm giving, money to an orphanage, so aren't I just the nicest character ever now? It's like, well, I think we're really discounting everything else that's ever been in like a part of this character before. So like, that's very One Piece to me. I feel like One Piece does that bullcrap all the time, but like this game definitely does that too. There's some twists in there and such. They're nice. But I think the themes overall and everything the game seemed to be building to could have been handled a lot better. I feel like when you have like a super long JRPG like this, and you have, like, this game clearly is trying to say something like for most of the game, and it never really accomplishes that. I think I was all like, at the very beginning of the game, I was like, bro, I think there's going to be some crazy twist, and like I'm going to be like, yo, this game was building to this moment, and it's like that never really happens. You could make the argument you get those twists, but like they never really felt very good to me. It's a fun ride, but like the end is satisfying enough. I just wish that it could have been more of a through line, and you just really want to see that payoff after putting 80 hours into a game. That's just kind of what you want, is like a solid payoff. And I just don't think Metaphor Rephantazio does that excellent payoff. It just is a good enough. You beat the bad guy. Guess what the ending is? You beat the bad guy. Ta-da! Sorry to spoil the end of the game, but that is what happens. Speaking of the ending, the game also started to lag a bit towards the end for me. There were about 2 or 3 times where the game, I was like, okay, this is the end. We're wrapping it up. And it never did. It kept going. The game's cutscenes and dialogue also, became really thick at the end there, really dialogue heavy. Cutscenes would literally, like, I would sit down in an evening and play the game, and I would start up the game and put down the controller, and I had done nothing but watch cutscenes towards the end of the game, which is crazy to me. It was like 2.5 hours of just nonstop cutscenes, which to me seems a bit excessive. I think obviously a bit excessive. It's kind of one of those things you expect from a JRPG, but still really ridiculous. That I think needed to probably be pared down a little bit. Overall, beginning and end seem a little bit drawn out to me. So you kind of maybe saw a little bit of me complaining, or kind of saw some mirroring of complaints from the beginning and the end there. But the thing is the meat, all the middle, the bread of this sandwich is just kind of your normal white bread. It's just fine, it's okay. But like the meat is really high quality. It's high quality cut of meat there. And that's, again, not discounting the beginning and the end. They're fine, but like I really adored the middle part of this game and didn't really feel like the beginning and end like added too much. Or at least, elevated this game beyond what it could have been. Which I need a side here. A special shout out to the voice acting and auto dialogue features in this game. Most of the actors here are British, and it adds a lot more to like the royal flair of the game. Minus like there's one fairy, like your like fairy companion has an American accent, and I don't know. I guess that's trying to say like, oh, it's a very diverse population of accents, but it's like everybody else just kind of has a British accent. So it's like I don't know how we're trying to push like everybody's diverse if it's really just like one fairy that has an American accent and everybody else is British. But still, I think it's nice. It's different. I know like Xenoblade has European actors that do a lot of voice acting or that voice act for those games. But like this feels different. It feels unique, and it feels like it fits. It fits with what this game is trying to do. Also, the auto advance. I don't think I've ever seen a game kind of deal with this better than this one has. So when I'm talking about auto advances, like most of the dialogue is like in text boxes. It's fully voiced. Some is not, but most of it is fully voiced for like major story sequences. And when you press triangle, it'll just auto play the dialogue. it will cut off right when a dialogue ends. It does not like wait a little bit and then move to the next one. And like when you're reading the dialogue, it's not voiced. I always felt like I had just the right amount of time. I never felt rushed. I never felt like it was going away too fast or staying around too long, which is so nice. Because like I will normally play games with like even fully voiced dialogue, and I will just be like, I will be mashing X already because I'm like, well, I don't want to have to wait like that half a second after the dialogue is fully over for it to continue. So like, I hate that in games, but this is handled amazing. Really appreciate that. That is such a nice quality of life thing. So, overall, this is one of the strongest and most well-designed JRPGs I've ever played. Been talking about this for a while. Sorry if it's been a little bumpy, but I really feel like the message here is it has a strong world, strong characters, addictive combat loop. It is more streamlined and addictive, still has that addictive day cycle, a fun story, high production values across the board, and there is very little for me to complain about. I mean, like, you're hearing me talk about the negatives, and the negatives are like, well, the beginning and ending aren't as good as I really would have wanted. And it's like, that's really it. You know? That's like, you know, and I feel like that's really... like, wow, like that's a really good takeaway. I feel like, how is that not a good takeaway? Like I'd say, you know, I saw some people complaining about like, oh, you can't romance companions. And I admit, you know, like I wasn't super missing this feature, even though at the end of the game I was like, hey, I feel like something's missing. You know, like can't put my finger on it. And I was like, oh yeah, I never banged anybody. Like, oh, well, I don't know. I don't need to do that. But like you know, it also feels like that probably based on how the story plays out, I kind of understand why they did that, and it probably would have made the story kind of awkward to have like a relationship with one of your party members at the very end. So like, I'm okay with it. Like I didn't really freak out too much about that, but like I totally understand why somebody would be like, why am I not making out with my party members? Like, shouldn't I be able to make out with one of them? And I understand your frustration there, but like in my humble opinion, like, I don't think the game suffers too much for a lack of romance options there, or no romance options. But at the end of the day, it took me about 70 hours to beat this on easy, and way more months than I initially set out to beat it in. And while, you know, I've been getting FOMO watching all these new games come out, you know, like literally just been watching Hades 2, Mario Galaxy 2, Ghost of Yotei. I mean, like, Silent Hill F just reviewed very highly. Like, bro, there's so much coming out. And I've just been like, oh, I'm playing this super long JRPG. I need to get back to playing other games. My backlog is screaming at me. I can confidently say, I'm so glad I stuck with it. It is one of my favorite games in general. Okay? And I think I'm going to stop. I'm going to say that again. This is one of my favorite games ever made. And it is easily in my top 3 JRPGs of all time. I will tell you what they are right now. Persona 4, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and Metaphor Rephantazio. That is how much I like this game. Not only did I have a blast playing it, was super giddy every time I picked up the controller, always having a fun time, but it is in general, you know, it's one of my top games ever. I mean, we need to see more games like this. We need to see more development studios say, we have a really popular franchise, how can we legitimately improve on it? And I don't think everybody can do that too, by the way. I don't think everybody can say, we have something that's good, how do we make it great? I think a lot of people would probably look at it, a lot of things, and say, we're making something really good, we really don't need to change it. And if they do make changes, it probably wouldn't be changes that needed to be made, or maybe they make it worse, or, you know, like something like that. I think it's really hard to, you know, it's really easy for me to sit back and be like, well, yeah, you know, like you made Persona, and like, yeah, those are pain points of the game, even though, like, yeah, it's still a really, really good JRPG. But, like, to see somebody come up with solutions for those problems and still give a quality experience, that's crazy to me. I mean, like, this is sitting at a 92 on Metacritic. Totally understand. One of the highest reviewed games ever. And I think, for me personally, a 9.5. 9.5 out of 10. It's literally just the length and the, kind of drawn out beginning and end that really kind of make this, like, take away a 0.5 from me. But that is so rare. It is so, so rare for me to, especially with a game this long where it has so much track to trip and fall and stumble, and it doesn't. That is so crazy for me to give this game a 9.5 for any game. Really, it is so rare for me to ever say, like, this is one of my favorite games ever. Do you know how uncommon that is? I play so many games in hopes of finding, yeah, this is like one of my top favorite games of all time now. Now, it's unfortunate because I know I don't have the time to go back and replay this game ever. And I know, like, in a year, they're going to come out with, like, Metaphor Rephantazio Ultimate Edition or Reloaded or whatever the frick, and they're going to have, like, an extra 30 hours of content, like they did with Persona 5. And it's like, well, you didn't play the real version of the game. Like, now you have to replay the game again. It's like, well, F that. I don't have a million hours of my life to replay most of the same game that I've already played. It really sucks that that's how they treat these games. Really wish they just freaking, release the full freaking game up front. But, it makes money. I get it. And, Persona 5 Royal is like totally, I get it, objectively better. Same with, like, Persona 4 Golden. They're, like, obviously, like, objectively better. But still, like, I know I'll probably never go back and play this game again, but I think it is objectively one of the best games I've ever played, and I'm super glad I got to play it. As an aside, I do not see people talking about this game very much, which is crazy to me. This game sold decently well, but it did not sell as much as I would have expected, considering Persona is such a good, like, it's such a massive seller. Like, this sold, apparently, they announced not long ago, it sold 2 million units, which is, like, good. Like, 2 million is good, but given how big Persona is, I just assumed, and the reviews behind this game as well, I mean, it was nominated for Game of the Year. It was, 92 on Metacritic. That's insane. You would expect that it probably sold a lot better, but it did not. It did not sell that. And I get that it's a hard sell. The length is really hard to tell people, like, yeah, do you want to freaking play this game for 80 hours? And it's like, well, or you can play, like, 4 other, like, AAA games that are you're probably maybe even going to like more. And it's like, yeah, probably not. It's like, well, yeah, that's a hard sell. And, super high quality of games out right now. It's really hard to convince anybody to commit so much of their time to this game when you have 1,000,001 other games coming out that are also 90 pluses. 1,000,001 is high, obviously, but 5 games came out this year, I feel like, that are 90 pluses, which is crazy. And I can't recommend it enough to lovers of the genre. And something interesting is that if you look at the trophies for this game, it is an 80-hour game, and over 40% of players have beaten it, which I follow trophy stats pretty regularly, and if you are a game that gets 30% of players to beat the game, you're lucky. Like, you're really lucky. And I remember having struggles trying to find the time to play this game, and I was like, oh, dude, I don't know how, people beat this game. How did people find the time? I had somebody on my friends list who had beaten this game in, like, a week. And I was like, how the frick did you manage that? It was admittedly over, like, Christmas break or something, but it was like, oh my gosh, like, he must have done nothing but play this game for, like, an entire week. But, like, the through line on this proves that people who start this game really like it. And even though it's really long, they stick around. And that is a massive testament. Like, I don't think I think that is possibly, like, the strongest recommendation you can possibly give somebody. Is like, well, like, 2 in 5 people beat the game. And I know that sounds like, oh, that's not that much. Games that are like an hour and a half long don't even have a 40% completion on trophies. Like, like, it's that crazy that people beat this game. And so, like, the fact that nobody seems to be talking about it, it feels like this game fell off the zeitgeist almost immediately. I don't know if that speaks to the zeitgeist. I don't know if it speaks to the quality of games that are out right now, but like it's really sad, I think, to see how few people are like screaming from the rooftops, yo, Metaphor Rephantazio really deserves your attention. Even though obviously reviewers did do that, it reviewed very well. No one said anything bad about it. I don't know. I don't know if it wasn't marketed well. I don't know what it is. Because even I was like kind of meh on it when I first played it, when I first played the demo. And I think that was a lot of like I was coming off Persona 3 Reload, and I was like kind of OD'd on, Atlas style JRPGs. Like that's kind of my take on why I wasn't super excited to get into it. But still, I don't think everybody played Persona 3 Reloaded. So like they shouldn't be OD'd on it. So I don't know. Maybe the medieval style fantasy didn't really resonate. I don't know. I see that resonating with people normally. So maybe the Japanese take on it is odd to be. I don't know. But again, I will reiterate. If you take nothing else from this conversation, you should take that Metaphor Rephantazio is one of the best JRPGs ever made. You should 100% give it a chance. If you even remotely like JRPGs, if you like Persona, I think this is a instant home run for you. I cannot scream it enough. I love this game. I really, really, really do. And I'm really glad I put the time into it. It's one of those things that like I'm frustrated with how many games there are to play and how little time I have to play them, but I'm so glad I make time for these games that eventually become my favorites. And that is all I have to say about Metaphor Rephantazio. I mean, it was literally, an hour? Maybe over an hour of talking about Metaphor Rephantazio. But I told you, I warned you, there was going to be a lot to say about this game. When you have a game like this, and I think I really try to exemplify that in my reviews and my impressions, is like I don't like talking about things unless I really have delved into it and can give you a full, thorough opinion. And yeah, that hurts me sometimes with impressions for the podcast because I don't have them. Or like I've been playing Metaphor Rephantazio for 6 months, and it's like, well, what the frick am I going to talk about on the podcast this week? Because I've been playing the same game again, and I haven't made very much progress again. So like, it's unfortunate for that, but like, fortunately, I have the full picture to tell you. If I had just come, and I think I did talk about impressions for the demo a year ago on the podcast, but for me, it was kind of a lukewarm feeling to it of like, well, this is more Persona. And it's like, it is more Persona, but it's a heavily refined and way better version of it. And I still love like the Japanese, like hanging out with friends after school in Japan, in Tokyo or whatever. Like I love that. Love that aesthetic. Love that vibe. I'm a weeb, so like that's natural for me to gravitate towards that. But like Metaphor Rephantazio gives you a world that you really want to be immersed in, and like that's what I think JRPGs are the best at, because they're known for these really inventive worlds and these really cool characters and these really long in-depth stories, and you get that with Metaphor Rephantazio, and I think some JRPGs in the past few years have really dropped the ball on that. So, still going on about Metaphor Rephantazio. I'm trying to wrap it up, dude. My brain is fried. I've been talking for over 2 hours about this game, about games in general. And I guess I should say thank you for listening. If you made it this far, if you made it through all of my Metaphor Rephantazio, all of my news segment, you, my friend, are amazing. I really do appreciate it. Really trying to work hard behind the scenes right now to make the podcast better, make the brand better. It sounds so gross for me to say brand better, but it is what it is. I have my reasons. I am doing things that hopefully will pay off in the future, and we'll see. But for now, I really do appreciate you sticking around. I really do appreciate you listening to me and giving me this opportunity, because not everybody has this opportunity. I try to work for it. I try to put in the hours for it, and I hope that to you, it's worth it. And thank you, friend, for allowing me to live out my passions and to grow in this way. So, anyway, enough about that. Friend, thank you again for joining me on this episode of the Plug In Play podcast. I hope you're well. I hope you continue to do well, and I hope you play some good video games. Bye-bye.